True strength lies in the ability to remain silent. Sometimes it's not what we say, but what we don't say that reveals who we truly are. I've spent years observing people, both through the lens of ancient Stoic wisdom and by simply watching how human nature unfolds in daily life. And let me share a secret with you. Every wise man I've ever known shares one common trait: they never waste their words. They don't rush to fill the silence. They never say anything that could break someone's trust. Today we'll uncover 7 phrases that truly intelligent men never say. These phrases don't just reveal someone's mindset, they reveal their inner strength, emotional discipline, and self-control. If you're ready to live your life with a Stoic mindset, subscribe to the channel and let's walk the path to greater wisdom together. It's not my fault. A wise man never uses this phrase because he understands that taking responsibility for his life is one of the clearest signs of inner power. When someone says, "It's not my fault," they're not just avoiding responsibility, they're also giving away their power to grow and evolve. Yes, life isn't always fair. Sometimes we're neither the cause of what happens to us nor able to prevent it. But Stoic philosophy teaches us this: we may not choose what happens to us, but we always choose how we respond. As Marcus Aurelius once said, if the problem is within you, change yourself. If it's outside of you, change your attitude towards it. This powerful idea shows that responsibility is deeply personal. It comes from within. A wise man knows when someone constantly defends themselves with excuses, they're really just protecting their own weakness. Saying "it's not my fault" is easy. It frees you in the moment, but it also traps you in the role of a victim. And as long as you're a victim, you cannot lead your own life. Intellectual strength isn't just about being smart, it's about being honest with yourself. A wise man asks himself, what role did I play in this? What can I learn from this situation? What can I do differently next time? Because he understands, blaming others keeps you stuck in the past. Taking responsibility is the first step into the future. How long can you keep blaming the world around you? What exactly will that change? Real transformation begins the moment you accept your share of the burden. A wise man understands this deeply. No matter who is at fault, choosing to take responsibility is the key to strength, freedom, and personal growth. You see, the voice of hesitation, fear, and stagnation in many people's lives often sounds like this: that's how it's always been. But what they're really saying is this: I'm afraid of change. I feel safer clinging to a familiar past, even if it's painful, than stepping into an unknown future. Of course, every comfort zone is just a silent grave. There is no growth there, only stillness, decay, and missed potential. Look around you. How many people live the same routines, hang out with the same people, think in the same patterns just because that's what they were taught, what they saw growing up, or what they've always done? For them, change is dangerous. But in reality, the real danger is staying the same. Those who constantly say this is how it's always been are often just accepting outdated beliefs handed to them by society or family without ever questioning them. It's a form of mental laziness. Instead of forming their own thoughts, questioning assumptions, and seeking new paths, they defend the status quo. And that stifles both personal and professional growth. But Stoic philosophy shows us a different path. Marcus Aurelius once said, everything you think today was once questioned and changed by someone before you. That means much of what we now call normal was once seen as radical, unacceptable, or even insane. So the phrase, "that's how it's always been," isn't a sign of truth, it's an excuse, born out of fear and laziness. The weak cling to the past, because the past doesn't change. It's familiar, it asks nothing of you. But the strong, they build the future. Because the future is uncertain, risky, and challenging, but also filled with hope and possibility. When someone says, "that's just how the system works," it's not my problem. They're shifting the responsibility to someone else. They blame society, the government, their family, or life itself. while stepping aside as a passive observer. But the Stoic mindset teaches us, don't focus on what you can't control. Focus on your reaction to it. So if the system is broken, you can be the one who questions it, challenges it, and creates something new within it. As an individual, you can begin something different in your circle, your life, your work. And maybe, just maybe, you'll be the one to plant the first seed of change. These are the people who truly change the world. Those who say, can this be better? Instead of it's always been like this. Those who ask, can I do this differently? Rather than saying, everyone else does it this way. Those who wonder, is this really true? Instead of blindly accepting, this is what I was taught. Change is not the risk. Change is life itself. To stay still in the water is not to survive, it is to drown. Look at history. The greatest achievements were made by those who dared to challenge the words, that's how it's always been. Copernicus said the earth revolves around the sun. Before him, everyone said, that's how it's always been. Martin Luther declared that every person had the right to read the Bible. Before him, it was believed only the church has that right. Rosa Parks sat on that bus and said no to racism. Before her, they said, that's how it's always been. Throughout history, revolutions, progress, and transformation began with a bold resistance to that one passive phrase. That's how it's always been. Now ask yourself honestly, in which areas of your life are you still using that phrase? Where are you afraid of change? Where are you hiding in the comfort of the past and rejecting the possibilities of your future? Because your answers to these questions will show you the path to inner freedom. And remember this, a wise person values the lessons of the past, but is not enslaved by it. Learn from the past, but don't be a prisoner of it, because your tomorrow is being shaped by your courage today. And those who keep saying that's how it's always been, they lose their future. Don't be one of them. Question, change, grow. Now let's move to another common phrase, one that people have said throughout history and still say today, I already know everything. Let me tell you this clearly. That phrase is the peak of ignorance, because the person who says this has already closed all their doors. They no longer want to learn. They no longer ask questions. They no longer seek truth. And that is the death of growth. Yes, sometimes a person reads a lot, gains experience, and becomes an expert in their field. But that doesn't give them the right to say, I know everything. In fact, the wiser a person becomes, the more they begin to realize how little they truly know. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, real knowledge begins by admitting your ignorance. This is a profound idea. It means that a person only becomes ready to learn when they accept what they don't know. But the one who says, I already know everything, has chosen to live in a dark room and refuses to turn on the light. A wise man continues to learn because he understands knowledge is infinite, but life is short. You can go to as many universities as you want, collect all the certificates, stack up books to the ceiling, and yet the world will still be full of things you don't know. Each new fact, each new idea, each new perspective opens a new window in your mind. But those windows are only visible to a humble mind. True intelligence lies in the ability to doubt, to question, to investigate, not being afraid to ask. Having the courage to say, maybe I'm wrong. Wondering, how can I do this better? These people are always evolving. They don't see themselves as experts because they know expertise is a process, not a final destination. On the other hand, those who say, I know everything, are often afraid. They're afraid that new knowledge might destroy their old beliefs. They're afraid that someone else's idea might challenge their ego. They're afraid that asking questions will make them look weak. But the Stoic philosophers taught us, true strength is being able to admit what you don't know. That's both intellectual humility and inner power. Socrates once said, I know that I know nothing. It is one of the wisest statements in all of history, because he was the philosopher who questioned more than anyone, thought more deeply and listened to opposing views. And that's why his name lives on forever. So ask yourself, what happens to those who say, I already know everything? They become outdated over time. Because the world changes, information expands, technology evolves, and our understanding gets renewed. But their thinking stays frozen in place. A person who approaches today's knowledge with yesterday's ego is doomed to fall behind. A wise person lives by this philosophy. I can learn something from everyone. My opinion might not always be the most accurate. Maybe there's a new perspective I haven't considered. What I knew yesterday is not enough for today. This mindset leads to growth. Such a person is always reading, listening, analyzing, improving. Ignorance is not dangerous, but not knowing that you're ignorant, that's dangerous. Even worse is knowing that you're ignorant and trying to hide it. Pretending to know it all is actually the death of self-growth. At the end of the day, ask yourself these questions. When was the last time I admitted I was wrong about something? Who was the last person I learned something from? If you can't answer these questions, it means your ego has imprisoned you, and you're no longer growing, you're stagnating. Never forget, a wise person always remains a student, because the world never stops being a teacher. Every moment, every person, every situation can be a new lesson. But only minds that are open can recognize these lessons. Saying, I already know everything, shrinks your mental world. But those who ask, what else can I learn, expand their lives with endless possibilities. There's another phrase that wise people avoid. That's not my problem. This is the voice of indifference. The moment when the conscience goes silent. The excuse ego hides behind. These words are the first step in building a wall between yourself and the world. But Stoic philosophy teaches us we should not live only for our own comfort, but for the common good. As Marcus Aurelius said, people exist for the sake of one another. Either teach them or tolerate them. There's a powerful call within this sentence. If someone is doing wrong, guide them. If you can't guide them, forgive them. But do not turn away, because life is not built only on me, it is also built on us. Saying it's not my concern and ignoring a problem can sometimes mean you are becoming part of the problem, because indifference is as dangerous as injustice. To stay silent and walk away while there is suffering, injustice, or hardship around you weakens your inner strength. A wise and stoic person understands this truth. Every person's pain is, in a way, also my pain. Every disorder in the world is my responsibility, too, as a member of this shared society. That's why a wise person never says, this is not my problem. Instead, they ask, how can I help? They don't say, I can't make a difference anyway. They ask, even if it's small, what step can I take to create change? Because a person with a conscience knows that even the greatest changes begin with a small spark. Remember this, responsibility doesn't just apply to what belongs to you. It should reflect in everyone your life touches. If a friend is struggling, don't step back and say, that's their issue. If a co-worker faces injustice, don't shrug and think, that's their burden. If someone asks for help, don't say, let someone else handle it. Because these thoughts are small silences that slowly lead to the death of humanity. Stoic philosophy teaches us human beings are part of one whole. And if one part is in pain, the entire body feels it. Yes, maybe your life is good. Maybe you have few problems and everything is going smoothly. But that does not give you the right to ignore the pain of others. On the contrary, those who have more carry more responsibility. A wise person understands that. If injustice exists in a society, it will eventually affect everyone. If there's a fire in one house, it can burn down the whole street. If no one responds when a person cries for help, it means humanity has gone silent. Sometimes just listening is enough. Sometimes just showing up. Sometimes just a single sentence can make a difference. Because often what someone truly wants to ask is, in the moment I felt like I didn't matter to anyone, were you there? If you've chosen the path of wisdom and stoicism, the answer should always be yes. Societies that say that's not my problem one day drown in the very problems they ignored, because turning a blind eye to others is risking your own future. True strength is refusing to stay silent in the face of another's suffering. True intelligence is the ability to empathize. True leadership is not being afraid to share responsibility. If you truly want to change something in this world, the first change must begin with your attitude. One more phrase that wise people never use is, "They made me angry." This phrase is a silent scream of emotional weakness. When someone says that, what they're really saying is, "I don't control myself. I'm at the mercy of how others behave." But Stoic philosophy teaches the exact opposite. No one can make you angry, you allow it to happen. Epictetus explained this clearly. People are not disturbed by events, but by the meaning they assign to them. Which means, what someone says to you, or what someone does, is just an objective fact. But when you respond with a negative emotion, the inner war begins. A wise and stoic person understands, my emotions are my responsibility. If I'm angry, it's not someone else's fault. It reveals a weakness in my own inner world. I have the power to choose my response. I must act consciously, not reactively. When someone says they made me angry, they've handed over control of their emotions to someone else. And that means you've lost your freedom. If you get angry every time someone behaves badly, it means your emotional buttons are in someone else's hands. But the Stoic mindset gives you an incredible power. No one gets to decide what happens inside me. That power belongs to me and me alone. A wise person understands someone else's rudeness shouldn't disturb my peace. Another person's shouting shouldn't drain my energy. Even the most unjust behavior shouldn't destroy my inner balance. Because silence is not weakness, it is a sign of strength. And emotional control is the beginning of true leadership. Did someone disrespect you today? Did you get angry, hurt? Did a storm break out inside you? Then ask yourself, am I so weak that I let this feeling take over me? Or am I strong enough to choose my response? Because emotions are not answers, they are signals. A wise person reads the signal but never becomes its prisoner. Remember this. Your reactions are the products of your past experiences. Your responses, however, are the reflection of your maturity and depth of thought. That's why a Stoic thinks before reacting. They reflect, evaluate, and then choose their action with intention. Seneca once said, "If something angers you, remember the problem is not in the action itself, but in the value you assign to it." This simple idea holds the key to inner freedom. Yes, anger may arise for a moment, but living with anger, letting it guide you, means losing your self-discipline. Yes, people might provoke you, but you alone decide when and how to respond. So how do you behave? Does someone's words, actions, or glance ruin your entire day? Or are you the kind of person who leads with calm, commands with silence, and governs your emotions like a master? If silence is your strength, then anger will flee from you. And you will become a leader of emotions, not their victim. Now let me tell you one of the most dangerous thoughts a person can have. I can't do it. That thought is the voice of fear, the language of laziness. Behind that one simple sentence lie countless buried potentials, abandoned dreams, and efforts left unfinished. When someone says, "I can't," what they're really saying is, "I'm not even willing to try because I'm afraid of the outcome. I don't even have the courage to measure my own strength." But Stoic philosophy teaches us the opposite. Effort is the birthplace of ability. Seneca said, "Don't say I can't, you just haven't started trying yet." A wise person understands all strengths lie within experience. You can only grow by setting out, trying, and sometimes failing. You will never know if a door will open unless you knock on it. A person who says, "I can't do this," defeats themselves before they even begin. But Stoic thinking calls you to, if your inner voice says no, persistently try to say yes. Because you discover your limits only through trial. And very often you realize those limits were just boundaries created by your mind. A wise person knows that. Every "I can't" hides inexperience, self-doubt, and fear of hardship. Success comes not from ability, but from starting. Because the path to success passes through the fear of the first step. Failure, yes, it may happen. It should happen. Because every failure is a lesson that leads you to new skills. Thomas Edison said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Thinking like this is the beginning of true strength. Never forget, the more you say, "I can't," the weaker you become. The more you say, "I will try," the closer you get to yourself. Your enemy is not failure. Your enemy is the inaction born of fear. Marcus Aurelius said, "All the power you need is already within you." So when you retreat from a challenge, ask yourself, do I really not have the ability? Or do I simply refuse to leave my comfort zone? Because often the path you close off by saying, "I can't," was the very path that could set you free. Before you say those words, pause for a moment. Take a deep breath and ask yourself, if I succeed at this, how will my life change? If the greatest opportunity of my life lies behind this fear, can I afford to ignore it? Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is looking fear in the eye and moving forward anyway. And a wise, stoic person knows, in the end, only the paths you start will bring results. The roads you never begin will forever remain victims of the phrase, "I can't." You can do it. Even if you try and don't succeed, you are already stronger than you were yesterday. And that is true victory. Now I'll share the seventh thought that wise people avoid. If they did it, I would do it too. This thought seems to say, I have no values of my own. I'm just reacting to someone else's actions. This is a reactive way of living. But Stoics teach us to think proactively. Stoicism says, what you remain attached to is not others' changes, but your own principles. Because adjusting yourself to someone else's behavior means surrendering yourself to them. It means casting aside free will and holding your pride hostage. A wise and stoic person thinks like this: no matter what they do, I will act according to what I believe is right. I do good not to receive something in return, but because it is valuable. I choose honesty not because someone deserves it, but because it fits my character. Because having no principles means being a prisoner of others, but having principles means protecting your inner peace. This mindset is the foundation of an unconditional life. You might say, if they behave well, I will behave well. If they showed respect, I would too. If the world loved me, I would be gentle to the world. But in doing so, you hand control over to someone else. You stop being the driver of your own life. You become just a passenger. Inner freedom is only possible when you live by unconditional values. If someone else's behavior guides you, you've lost your compass. Marcus Aurelius said, an injustice done by another does not change your duty to act rightly. This is the golden rule of Stoic principles. Your values are not to stoop to others' level, but to give you stability. A wise person understands that. If you behave by watching others, you drift away from your true self. If you do good expecting something in return, it's no longer virtue, it's a transaction. If you respond with revenge, you add another candle to the darkness. What is true strength? To maintain your level without stooping to someone else's. What is true wisdom? To respond to someone who hurt you within the bounds of your values. That is, don't say, if they did it, I would do it. The only thing you should say is, no matter how they behave, I will remain true to myself. Because this is the peak of inner strength. Seneca said, a person who holds to their inner principles is free from the influence of thousands. This freedom is silent but magnificent. It turns you into a steady lighthouse in a world where everyone else changes. Never forget, no matter how others behave, stay true to your path. Because greatness is doing what is right without expecting anything in return. This is the true secret of the Stoic life. This is the way of the wise. Finally, I want to tell you this. If at any point you have said any of these 7 expressions, erase them from your speech, because that is the first step toward becoming a wise person. You are measured not by the words you speak, but by the words you withhold. Stoicism is not just an ancient philosophy, it is a guiding light in today's chaos. Being wise is not about knowing a lot. It is about knowing yourself. Thank you for watching this far. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel, because we have a long way to go on this Stoic journey.